Hey, what's up, y'all? You were listening to your Mental Matters podcast. I'm your girl, Mo. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. We are back with another episode and a very special guest, Kaidi. Kaidi is a therapist. She wears many hats, but she, over the overarching thing or the thing that I think like connects us is
Right.
you being in the mental health field, you being a therapist. And yeah, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the people, let them know who you are in more depth, what you do. Um, yeah, let's get into
Sure.
it. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me,
No, of
Mo.
course.
So my name is Kaidi Rodriguez, and I'm here in my therapist and writer capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So as a therapist, I have a virtual practice, Serenity Wellness and Therapy, and I work with people that identify mostly as anxious perfectionists and stressed out high achievers. Me being a perfectionist in recovery, that is my target audience. I also just moved to Houston, Texas, so I'll be seeing clients there in person very soon. And I'm also a writer.
Yeah.
So I've been a writer. That's been one of the ways that I've just processed my emotions since childhood.
Yeah.
And more recently, I've made my work more public. So I have an ebook and a journal that are published, and I'm working on my blog series, which we will talk about. So that is me.
Yes. Thank you so much for that intro, and thank you for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure. And the weather is super rainy today. That's a whole other thing, but
Thank you for being so gracious and having me.
no, of course, of course. And I love everything that you do, right? Like one of our mutual friends, Mac, shout out to Mac. Like,
Shout out, Mac.
yeah, that's really, Mac is like a brother to me. Like we are not related at all, but that's really like my brother. And he definitely like reached out to me and was like, hey, you should have Kaidi on the podcast. Like she's dope. Like, and explaining to me kind of like just what you have going on, right? Which I was able to read a little bit about in your blog that you mentioned. And I want us to get into some of that today. Like, I do have some, pieces of the blog with me
Okay.
that I actually wanted to read through. Or if you want to read through it, whichever one. But I thought it would be just good for the listeners to kind of hear just what you have going on, your journey, and kind of like, what you're setting out to do.
Sure.
Around like dating and finding your mate essentially, which I think is fire. I'm single, so like I love stuff like this, and I feel like being from New York in New York is just the it's not that good out here. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I can't even like sometimes I try to like hold back, but like the pick of the litter is it's crazy.
You know what's funny? In following a lot of dating coaches, which I mentioned in my blog,
Yeah.
they say that New York is actually a good place for women of color.
Really?
And Houston is not a great place. And we know certain places like LA,
Yeah.
Atlanta, we know those aren't the best places for Black women. But according to the quote unquote experts, they say New York isn't bad. So I don't know. I think it's a challenge no matter where you go, though.
Yeah.
It's a mental and emotional challenge. And that's part of what I'm sharing in my blog.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. So you know what? Let's get into it, right? Because before we get into it, like before we get into like the meat and the potatoes of like, all of, what you're doing, I do want to start with a mental health check-in. Like for every episode, I always start with a check-in just to see like how you're feeling overall, how you've been doing just emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So currently at this moment, how are you mentally?
In this very moment, this is so good. I do this with my clients.
Yeah.
I'm stressed just because of the drive. So I drove from New Jersey to here and then finding the parking. And like I mentioned, he told me it was going to be $75 to park for 1 hour.
Crazy.
And I just threw some money at the problem. But
Yeah.
like, so I'm a little stressed.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited to share my journey with you and to chat.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you for, being here once again. And I love that. I love that you were still able to make it, but I'm also sorry that you're feeling a bit stressed.
It'll dissipate as we sit and talk. Just trying to get here and being late and everything. I hate it.
Yes. New York traffic is tough.
Yeah. I should have taken the train or something.
Yeah. That's why I'm always like super like patient, understanding, because navigating the subway system or just drive. I'm a driver myself, so fortunately I was able to get a ride here. But I think with driving, trying to beat traffic, the weather not being great is
Can be
so
tough. Where
Yeah.
are you in Manhattan or do you live in
I'm in
a borough?
Queens.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Queens. I frequent Manhattan and Brooklyn a lot. I feel like Queens is not as congested as,
Right,
Manhattan or
right, right.
Brooklyn. So driving it's okay there, but I feel like on a rainy day, on a Saturday too,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I went to school at NYU, so I should know. I should
Nice.
be
Me
prepared for
too.
it. But oh really? Okay,
Yes.
see. The social work school or which school?
No, I did the Steinhardt School for Mental Health Counseling and Wellness.
Okay.
Yep. So I think that might be a newer program there.
Yeah, I don't recall. We had the Constance Silver School of Social Work.
Got it. I think that one's still there.
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I have a couple of my peers were in the social work school as well. That the social work school's been around because social work's been around for forever.
Right.
And mental health counseling is a little bit newer. I think that makes sense. Yeah, but yeah. Nonetheless, let's get into it, okay? Because I was very interested after kind of reading through some of your blog, which I kind of want to start there. I want to kind of read through it to kind of catch the listeners up.
Okay.
Right? So if you don't mind me reading just a little bit of it,
Sure.
is that okay?
Sure.
All
We'll
right.
tell them the title of the blog series is 100 Dates in Houston.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I feel like the title is self-explanatory, but we're going to get into it.
Right.
All right. So, so I'll start from, I cut out a specific part and I'll start from there. Right. Okay. So it starts, welcome to the 100 Dates in Houston blog series. I'm endeavoring to go on 100 dates in Houston, Texas, in order to find the love of my life. I'll be taking you along as I experience the highs, the lows, and the lessons. Ultimately, I hope to also share my final victory. Whether the love of my life is date number 24 or 94, I will share it with you all. Worst case scenario, if my husband is supposed to manifest at date number 101, I suppose I'll have to start a 150 Dates in Houston blog series. But precious Lord, please don't let that be the case, right? So let's pause there, right? Let's pause there.
Yeah.
So yeah, what made you start this journey?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I just recently relocated to Houston in April.
Yeah.
And that was coming off a year and a half as a digital nomad.
Yeah.
And, I was single for most of that time, not the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But in moving, I felt like I wanted a fresh start. It would be a fresh start in a new place. And I still desire that partnership.
Yeah.
So I got to Houston and I went on a few dates, some connected through friends, some through apps. And I had some challenges in those first few dates. And immediately, my hope and my emotions just kind of dropped.
Yeah.
And while I was feeling discouraged, I was on TikTok and I came across a TikTok by a millionaire. He's an author and businessman, Alex Hermosi. And what he was saying was that in order to achieve any level of success, volume is necessary.
Yeah.
So oftentimes in life, we endeavor on a journey. It could be any journey, whether it be to find our dream job or to make certain gains in the gym.
Yeah.
And we give up after, a few weeks or even a few months saying it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But we really have to put in the work. And through putting in the work and working through the plateaus and working through the setbacks, we not only get closer to our end goal, but we also learn so much in the process and become better and become what we need to be in order to maintain, that goal at the end of the day. And so, I said, I am going to endeavor to go on 100 dates and make this more about the journey than the destination. So, in therapy and coaching, we have this thing, the journey versus the destination mindset.
Yeah.
And when we're so focused on the destination and just getting to that goal, then we're discouraged every step of the way of us not being there.
Yeah.
So for example, if I'm focused on losing 20 pounds and I'm doing everything I need to do to get to those 20 pounds, but every day I'm checking the scale, have I lost the 20 pounds? No. Have I lost it? No. I might have lost 5. I might have went to the gym, but I didn't get to that goal.
Right.
Then I become discouraged.
Yeah.
But it's more about, are you doing the things day to day that you need? And if you keep doing that, at some point you will get to that 20 pounds, that destination.
Yes.
So it's really about me maintaining that mindset of volume and
Yeah.
staying in the journey to help me stay in there and not give up, kind of.
Mhm.
So that's where it started. It started with the TikTok, basically.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like that's so like relatable, right? Because I feel like we're both Black women,
Mhm.
obviously, right? And, you know, I'm single. I'm single as hell, actually. And I say this every time I come on this podcast. I'm like, I will have an update for y'all when I'm in a relationship, right? But I think, yeah, like I think even you starting it off saying like when you went on those first couple of dates in Houston, you were met with challenges, right? I'm super curious if you don't mind sharing, like what were some of those challenges that you faced on those initial dates?
So let's see. I think the one that stands out the most, which is a post about Mr. Beard, I encountered emotional unavailability. And I know like we toss that term around a lot now, but I realized for me, both as a therapist and just as the type of woman I am that feels my emotions very deeply,
Yeah.
I really need someone who's emotionally intelligent and emotionally in tune.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come across a few guys in the past few years that weren't emotionally intelligent, and I would get excited about dates,
Yeah.
and then the date just kind of would plummet for one reason or another, usually tied to emotional unavailability.
Yeah.
And also through going through coaching and hearing, there's a lot of noise out there, which is a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of noise in just social media around how you should date and what you should do. And you want to be excited and you want to be open so that you can be vulnerable and you can actually connect. But then at the same time, you don't want to expect too much and get your hopes up too high, because then it's like you're putting all this pressure on one person, one date, when you're just supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
And so I was so excited about this one date, and we went on the date and it just went so badly. And I'm like,
gosh.
how could there be so much anticipation and flirting and whatnot up to the date, and then all of a sudden the guy's just like shut down and it's just weird. And I was battling between how do I remain excited and open but not expect too much, and you know, it's just such a balance. And so all of that was just an emotional, you know, journey for me.
Right.
And that was some of the setbacks. That was one of the setbacks.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think that is so common. At least I've experienced that too, right? Which is like, it's so weird, right? Because I think I was hearing, I've heard a lot lately, I think, like, or maybe this is just like social media, you know, how they be having like these quotes and like sayings and stuff that come up on social media. But I might have even seen it on like some type of like psychology something. I don't know if there's truth to it or not, but I thought it was interesting that like, I guess if you keep coming across emotionally unavailable people, that maybe there's something in you that is also emotionally unavailable. Because I think I come across emotionally unavailable men often. I'll be like, child, from what I know of, I am emotionally intelligent. I hold space for people. I'm very like in tune. Just as a therapist, I feel like that's my job.
Right.
Like, you know, like I do that for a living.
Right.
So I'm like, why is it that I keep coming across these people in my personal life that like, it's like either like pulling teeth for conversation or it's like, you know, it's just not like, it's been difficult, right? So I started to maybe just reflect inward and like ask myself, is it me?
Yeah.
Or, you know, but I think that's definitely something that has been a common experience for me too.
Yeah, and I've definitely heard people say that, like, you know, is it reflecting something in you? And after having sat with it and having done so much work, and that's not to say I don't have more work to do.
Yeah.
But I've also heard people say, and I think it's true, it's not so much what you attract, it's what you entertain. And as a woman, as a beautiful woman, as an intelligent woman, we are going to attract all kinds of different men.
Yeah.
Right? So when you encounter the emotional unavailability, because you're going to encounter all kinds of things, are you going to deal with it?
Right.
Right? And so it's seeing it and then being able to say, no, that's not for me.
Right.
But, you know, when you allow them to stay around and interact and all of that, then it becomes like, okay, this is a part of my life. And fortunately now I think I'm able to identify it earlier in the process.
Yeah.
And be able to release them rather than trying to get in there and change or let's figure it out or complain about it or whatever. I'm more easily able to let it go.
Right.
But that also doesn't mean that it's not disappointing.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
So
exactly. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And Yeah. I guess we'll continue, right? Because I think this is good. So yes. So continuing on, it says, before we get started, there are some things you should know about me beyond the fact that I am a psychotherapist and a writer. Let's get personal, right? So now we're getting into your story, right? As a 38-year-old single woman, I've tried everything in my quest for love and life partnership. As a therapist myself, I'm not ashamed to say I've participated in years of therapy to work on myself and heal childhood conditioning, right? I wanted to pause there because even as I was like reading through this earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, the childhood conditioning stood out to me, right? And I got curious, like what were some of the things that you were conditioned um into, right,
Mm-hmm.
as a child?
Yeah, so one of the main things was around the Black church,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very much still a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but I've said that my understanding of Christianity and my Christian journey has changed.
Yeah.
And so, being in church, there was very much a focus on marriage and no sex outside of marriage.
Yeah.
And so, what that created for me was a hyper focus of marriage. Like
Mm.
I got to get married, because
Mm-hmm.
I need to do that in order to resolve my sexuality as a human. And so it's just very, very hyper focused on marriage, so much so that I would try to make relationships work that just really didn't work. I didn't learn enough about myself as a woman and following my own voice and my own intuition.
Yeah.
And so trying not being in tune with yourself and your feelings and your needs and your emotions and all of that doesn't work very well in dating.
Mm.
I can attune to other people sometimes better. Well, at one point it was attuning to other people better than to myself,
Yeah.
and that goes with the emotional unavailability, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I see what's going on with you. Let me help you. Let's figure it out. But that doesn't work in terms of maintaining a healthy relationship.
Right.
And so that conditioning around sex and shame and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, like I said, that created put marriage really on a big pedestal for me.
Yeah.
And I think that because it was on the pedestal, I wasn't able to honor myself in the way that I needed to in order to find the right partner.
Mm.
And so now, unlearning all of that and working through all of that.
Yeah, that's fire. I love that so much. And I think that's super relatable again, right? Like I actually feel like we have some things in common.
Yeah.
Like because I definitely come from a similar background, like
Mhm.
growing up in church, Christian, non-denominational background. The teachings were very much so like, no sex before marriage, things
Right.
of that nature. And there was just a certain way that I was brought up to where like even like dating outside of the church was like somewhat frowned upon, right? Like there was definitely like a community in church. So it was
Mhm.
like encouraged to like date within the church,
Right.
right? Because there are more like-minded people here and things of that
Right.
nature. But I do think that like outside of church, there's a whole world out there.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes, at least from in my experience, I felt like even just like autonomy, right? To explore things like other things that I may have gotten curious about or wanted to, I
Mhm.
feel like was stifled at one point until
Right.
I stepped outside of like the church that I grew up going to. I finally decided to like step away from and kind of just figure things out. I don't want to say on my own because the love for God is still there, and I
Right.
do feel like God like walks with us all, like daily. And I feel like that relationship is still there, but I think it took me having to decide um just to make a choice, like how did I want my life to feel as opposed to like what was expected and accepted from the people that like I've known my whole life
Mhm.
essentially, right? So I think it definitely was a challenge early on, but I think once I had some time away and I guess was breathing different air, I realized like it's okay to make certain decisions that like are outside of like maybe what I normally would have, and it doesn't have to be like I guess
Not gonna be the end of the world.
right. Exactly. And so I think that was definitely my experience too, that kind of played a part. And even still sometimes to this day, um, I have my moments where I'm like, it's okay, girl. Like I have to talk to myself and say,
Mhm.
it's fine. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like you're learning, you're growing,
Right.
and evolving essentially from like, maybe just more of like a bubble and
Mhm.
like thinking in this one particular way.
Right.
So for sure, I love that. And yeah, thank you for sharing. So yeah, we'll keep going, right?
Mhm.
Um, I've created vision boards to train my brain to see and believe what I desire. I've prayed, boy, how I've prayed. And I've written prayer lists to ask God for what I want. From Why Men Love Bitches to Men Don't Love Women Like You, I've read all the books. With each disappointment, I gained perspective on where I went wrong, pulled myself together, and attempted to do better next time. Did I mention I've spent thousands of dollars on dating coaches? I will never get over spending $4,000 to work with a coach who claimed she could get women like me married. Ooh, really? I'm like, I want to know what. That's so interesting. Was she any
Yeah.
good?
She was good. I'm not
Okay.
gonna lie, she was good. There were some things, I won't share her name because
Okay.
some things came out later on about her that I didn't like.
Okay.
But I did learn a lot. She was one of the coaches where I learned that I am not honoring myself in sense of saying what I want and just being real about what I want and maybe thinking I need to go for what I should want versus what I actually want.
Yeah.
So, and she actually encouraged me to go on my digital nomad journey of traveling and whatnot because that was what I really wanted. But at
Yeah.
the time, I was entertaining a relationship and I was like, but I won't be able to do it if I'm with him. And I decided to go for what I wanted.
Yeah.
So she was good, but I'm still not married.
Right.
And a message I would like to share with your listeners is if anybody tells you they have all the answers to a problem, especially a problem like marriage and dating relationships, there's no formulas.
Mhm.
There's no formulas to success. Like there can be guidelines, but we live in such a capitalistic society that people really can capitalize off of our pain. So you
Yeah.
just want to be careful about who you're following and the guarantees that they make. But I don't regret that coaching though. I don't.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a fact. I think there's so many like healers, teachers, and coaches, professionals that like, we got to fact check that, right? And be like, what do you do for real, right? And like, I think a question that I love to ask people, just who are maybe in a similar realm as I am, is like why they're doing what they're doing, because I think sometimes that makes the difference. I've definitely there's been times where I've spoken to, just even other therapists, right, to find out like, well, what started you on this journey? Like, what made you even want to be in this field? And not to say I'm the judge, right, to determine whether or not it's coming from a place of like sincerity or not.
Right.
But I think for me, sometimes that helps me to maybe just understand who I'm interacting with or communicating with, right? And so I think absolutely people have to definitely like use their discretion and things of that nature. But I think, yeah, like absolutely, this country is built off of just like, using
Right. People
people.
making money.
Right. Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But it can drive people in certain ways that
Yeah.
my main thing is just there's no formulas. If anybody tells you they have the answer to figure out how to get married or fix your relationship,
I don't believe them. Yeah. Like even like, cause relationships, I feel like I even tell my clients this. I'm like, there's no manuscript for it.
right.
Right. Like to each couple can really like just freestyle, right? And create whatever type of relationship that they want. But like, what are like, I think I like to, to kind of make like distinctions of like, well, what are the things that are like red flags for you? Like what's something that like, what's a hard like deal breaker for you versus what's something that is like not a hard deal breaker. Like what's something that you're willing to kind of like work with or work around? And then what are the things that are like, like kind of like red flag, green flag, yellow flag, essentially, right?
Pink flag.
Right, pink flag. Oh, we love the pink flag, girl. I be over there like, I'm like, I'm trying to do better. But but yes. So yeah.
Yeah, but it's different. Those things that work, the deal breakers and all of that is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
no formulas.
Exactly. Yeah, so let's keep going, right? So why Houston? Right now we're talking about the location, right? Because you're originally from New Jersey, right? And you made that move. So yeah, let's read through. And we're reading through her blog, guys, which you guys need to tap into, and all the information will be there. If you're okay with that, I can just put the links in so
Sure.
people can
Yeah.
check that out. Why Houston, right? So it says, after a year and a half of traveling as a digital nomad, which I want to get into that too, how that experience was, because that sounds really dope. It says, I recently decided to settle down and move halfway across the country from New Jersey to Houston, Texas. The pace is slower, the price tag is cheaper, and the quality is better. Not to mention the Black people here are thriving. In theory, this means it should be easier to connect with my type of guy. I tested this theory in 2021 and stayed in Houston for a month and a half during my nomad journey. I made quite a few connections during that short time and went on about 5 dates. With having success in just a month's time, I figured surely I could meet my match with an extended stay, right? On April 7th, 2023, I packed my little convertible to the brim and began the 1,700-mile journey with my Yorkie in the... Oh, no. I think it cut off there. But you know what? That's where we gonna stop, right? I love that. I love that you just decided to kind of get up and go, because I feel like, once again, I feel like I'm very much so like that. Like if I want to do something, kind of just go after it, because that's a big move, right? Just being, going from like East Coast, right, to more South.
Is it Midwest, South?
Midwest, South. Right, somewhere.
Southwest.
Exactly. One of those,
Yeah.
right? I feel like that's a big change. And so, but it sounds like it was a good one for you.
Yeah, it's been good. I'm now about, I guess, 5 months in. I'm in a funny stage. I'll be honest. I'm in a funny stage because the newness has worn off.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now you have to build a life in a new place.
Yeah.
Which takes time. You have to build community. I work solo, so I didn't, go for a job where there's going to be automatic connections.
Yeah.
But as far as the quality of life, I think it's definitely been a good move.
Yeah.
Cost of life. And I'm finding the dates,
That come on.
One difference I do see, the men do approach more there. I
Love
don't
that.
know if it's just a Southern thing or what, but that is part of the positive. But it is a transition in terms of finding just community and really get it planted in a new place.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like a thumbs up, like a worlds of a difference, because the guy's approaching you, actually. They're approaching versus like, I mean, I feel like out here, right, the culture is very much so like, it's like
everybody's passing, everybody's in their own world, like going quick, busy, all of that.
Yeah, the guys are kind of standoffish out here. They be wanting to be approached now. So I'm like, I mean, this is universal though. I don't know if it's just to New York, but I guess I'm speaking about where I am geographically and my experience. But the guys now be more standoffish, and the women seem to be more like asserting themselves and letting it be known what they want and stuff, which is okay too.
Right. I was gonna say, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I think in the past, when you're just waiting for a man to approach you, you can only go for whoever comes to you.
Right.
But if you see someone that you are interested in, I mean, at least you can open the door. Right?
Yeah.
Like say hello, open conversation, and then he'll carry it home if he's interested.
That's it.
But I think women can be empowered to go for they want as well and not just be picked.
Exactly. And I think even that idea of being picked, even I'm just thinking back to about that childhood conditioning, right? Because I feel like a lot of times, and even just connecting back to like the church too, right? I feel like sometimes I think that conditioning can come from there, right? Like maybe the man is the leader. The man will go after the wife essentially.
Right.
Or or even just like, kind of like patriarchy, right? Or like societal norms, societal standards, right? But I think just even the time that we're in now as a society, things are changing drastically, right? Where women are more empowered, women's movement, things of that nature. So like things are different now entirely from how they were just, like 30, 40 years ago, right?
Right.
Which isn't that long ago. And so I think that also I think is the contributing factor as to why like even the mentality is different about like how to go about this thing, which I actually like. But I think it can go too far.
Yeah.
Where it's like now
I'm not chasing you.
Ain't nobody chasing you, boy. Right? And so like that's kind of how I think that's where we're at now, which is like, okay, we have to kind of find that balance.
Right.
Yeah. So okay, cool. So we'll continue on, which is why 100, right? Which I'm excited to get into, right? So it says the thought of going on 100 dates may feel extreme, especially considering I am no spring chicken and have gone on countless dates over the years. However, I believe that setting my sights on 100 will shift and strengthen my mindset as I go through the highs and lows that make dating so difficult. You see, through repetition, we become proficient. We develop knowledge, strength, and skills that would have been impossible to possess without repetition. In the coaching world, that shift is known as the journey mindset. It cost me $4,000 to learn. Rather than having a destination mindset and focusing solely on my ultimate goal of life partnership, the journey mindset will allow me to focus on the next step and experience the transformation and it cut off there, right? I love that. And yeah, let's pause there, right? Because I think you mentioned that early on too, right? Like the journey mindset, right? Which I think I love, right? I think that and even the analogy that you gave about like whether that's like, a fitness goal or what have you, right? Like, focusing too much on like if the pounds is going down on the scale or not is not going to get you to where you want to be. Right. And so I think I love that mindset, right? And I think I've actually feel like I've developed that more lately, right? Because I'm actually on this fitness journey myself or whatever you want to call it. But it's actually been going really well because I've been focusing less on like the scale, which I feel like over the years of me like, because I'm, for those of you know, I don't even know that I've shared this with like my audience or the listeners recently.
Okay.
But I've definitely been trying to lose weight. And I feel like I see a difference, right? But I haven't looked at the scale at all. I think I look in the mirror on a day-to-day basis and I'm like, okay, you look good, girl.
Right.
Like, like affirming myself in that way. And I know that I'm making certain changes. I know my eating is different. I know I'm more active than I've been before. And so as opposed to getting on a scale and monitoring it or micromanaging it like how I was the times prior, now I'm just like, we're not even gonna look at that scale until I feel like I'm like satisfied with how I look like entirely, right? Just as it relates to like weight and like even just how I feel. I think it's more so like how I feel in my clothes, right? The me feeling like I have like a variety. I could wear what I want and feel comfortable completely, right? So that's really what I think the journey is about. And of course, like, because overall, like, I'm in good health. I don't have any like, like issues, but I think, you notice, at least me, I've noticed, I'm like, girl, like over the years, I was like, you got a little pudgy there. I think the pandemic is to blame for sure and just like stress.
Yeah, I got a lot of people in the pandemic.
Listen, and I'm like, we gonna work on this. And so I set a goal, right? Like my goal was like by my birthday, which is next month, right? I want to, be able to like feel confident in whatever I wear on my birthday, and things like that. And I feel like I'm kind of like halfway there where I'm I'm liking, okay, there's progress. But even if I don't get there, like if by next month I'm not completely and entirely there, I think I just feel satisfied with the fact that like I'm not stressing about it.
And you'll be further along than you were had you not started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think just focusing on just enjoying the journey, right? Like actually like even like things that I eat, like actually like what do I want to eat today that's healthy, but that tastes good, right? So I think even just changing the mindset around like what it means to like diet, quote unquote, which I try not to use that word because I feel like there's negative connotation around it. But yeah, so that was, I think, I love that, just that dialogue in there.
Like I said, it cost me $4,000 to learn it. So
Listen,
it's a good lesson. I'm giving it to you all for free.
Free 99. Okay. Yeah. So I appreciate that. And yeah, so let's keep going. Right. This is the last bit that I have. Which is, I am a woman with standards, and it's 2023. Most women are better off single than in unhealthy relationships, and I am no different. I don't subscribe to the idea of being in a relationship just to be in one, nor will I go on a date just to go on one. In order to land one of my 100 dates, I must find the man, one, attractive, physically, intellectually, or emotionally, respectful, ready to settle down. At the first sign of instability or immaturity of any kind, I will move on. I have additional standards to help with vetting that I will share in future posts, but these are my baseline for a first date. Love that. Although I want volume, quality still reigns over quantity. If that means it will take 2 years versus 1, so be it. Ooh, that was fire. You speaking to the people. I think I love that you listed what the standards are, like what the standards are, because I feel like, I don't know, like I think that's something that I even like when I'm speaking to my clients and we're talking about relationships, um, or dating or anything like that. I always bring up standards, right? Because a lot of times people are just freestyling. Even though going with the flow and freestyling is okay sometimes, I do think when you're being more intentional, right? You're setting that intention, your likelihood of like being successful is higher.
Right.
Right. And so I love that you listed that out because these was good. These baselines.
Yeah. You I don't want to just get the volume and just go on a date with just anybody just to say that I did it, because that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But I also try not to be too picky in terms of going on the date, who I'm going to go on the date with. Now, ultimately, for a partner, I think that you should be somewhat picky. Like if everybody in the world could be your partner, I don't know, like it just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
You do have to have certain things that work for you because you are a unique individual. But as an overall baseline to go on the date, there needs to be some kind of attraction, intellectual attraction, physical attraction, something, and some level of stability and respect. So that's the baseline.
That's the baseline for sure. I feel like, and honestly, like just with baseline, I feel like it's giving bare minimum, right? Especially when it comes to like respect, right? And certain things like, and even just speaking to like emotional availability, right? I mean, because I feel like the way like society is now, like people's like baseline is like like I don't even know that there's like it's like,
well, I'll tell you an interesting story. There's a blog that's getting ready to come out, the next post in the series called Dry Season. So I'm sharing that I'm on a dry spell and I hadn't been able to get any dates, but I've met a lot of guys. And so one of the guys, we named him the Nigerian Salsero. So he's Nigerian and he dances salsa. That's how I met him.
Okay.
But he asked me for my number while we were on this at this salsa event, and something told me just to ask if he was single. And he goes, "No, I'm actually married and working on my divorce, and my wife is in Nigeria." And so, when you talk about respectful and stable, are you respecting me? Are you respecting your wife? Approaching me. You're in this divorce transition. Stable is not the thing. So no, we're not going to even entertain this.
My gosh.
So those standards matter
for sure. First of all, that just stressed me out. I feel like
I'm actually met 2 married men since I've started this journey. I have connected with 2 married men. And another one, we actually exchanged numbers to just be friends. Like it's salsa. I do a lot of dancing, salsa friends. And his number is programmed in my phone. And I don't know how Facebook does it, but once you have someone's contact, then they'll show you their profile. So then I saw his profile and there's a woman in it. And I go looking around and he's married. And I was like, I'm glad that this didn't go beyond anything beyond friendship.
Right.
But yeah, these are the things you encounter. So you have to have discernment.
Have to. And I feel like that's the new trend right now. Like married men are just like seeking out single women.
I think it's always been a thing.
You know what? You're right. But maybe it's just, I feel like it's just more like, I think it's even more like accepted now too. So I feel like people are more just like upfront with it and like are okay with like even being like found out versus maybe before it was like more under wraps. You had a family over there and you was doing your thing over here and nobody knew about it until maybe you just got caught up one day, right?
Right.
But I think I'm stressed out. I'm so stressed out.
Well, I think it's important to speak to that being stressed out. It's important to recognize and look for the good examples because there are tons of bad examples in our brain. It's called negativity bias, where our brain tends to focus and hone in on all the bad things because it wants to protect us. But I think that there are a lot of examples of men loving their women well.
Yeah.
I'm such a big fan of Sierra and Russell Wilson. Like they're my little couple inspiration right now. And even in our personal circles and friends and family circles, looking for those people who are doing it right.
Yes.
And that kind of helps you to stick with it because you have, it's possible, right? So we have to remember that as we're encountering all the craziness.
Yes. Absolutely. Like you gotta like swim through, right? Swim through. But I think I think even like I saw something the other day that said like the statistics for like families, like, families staying together and things are like that, it's going up. So I'm like, okay, that gives me hope. I hope that was like a like actual statistic.
Yeah. I think I may have heard something similar.
Yeah.
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 For the first time in like years, the
Right.
numbers were going up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting for sure. So yeah, I appreciate you so much for, just talking through this with me and allowing, me and, the listeners to kind of, get some of these gems in here. I think I had two questions for you, right? One was, how do you know, like, say if you go on a date, right? Like, how do you know? Because it sounds like that date that you went on, you knew like right away that the guy was emotionally unavailable.
Not right away.
Okay.
Not right away with that guy.
Okay.
But you're saying, how do I know what specifically?
I guess, how do you know, like, what are the signs that a guy's like emotionally unavailable?
Okay. So what I've noticed is if there is a lot of intellectual conversation, not to say that that's bad, but a lot of times people may lead with the intellectual side of their brain. So they talk about facts and they talk about, just topics of, history and I love intellect too.
Yeah.
But there's both sides of those brains. So you have our intellectual mind and our emotional mind. And so if you're unwilling to tell me anything that has to do with emotions from I'm excited to see you or, just how you feel about things.
Yeah.
That can be one sign. With this particular guy, I noticed that he was quite guarded. So I had asked him prior to, so I dated him a few times when I was in Houston while I was traveling and then came back after I returned.
Yeah.
And when the first time that I was only in Houston for about a month when I was doing my digital nomad traveling. And like I said, we went out on a couple of dates. And I remember asking him a question that I like to ask men when I'm dating them. I asked them about their masculine archetype. So I'll have them pick from king, lover, warrior, or magician. And I'll say, which one do you feel like describes you more? Okay. And it's just interesting to like kind of see how they see themselves and kind of what energy they feel like they lead with. You can learn a lot. And he wouldn't answer it. He was like, I'm not going to answer that because I feel like it puts me in a box. Now, you could say I feel like I'm a little bit of everything or and explain why, but he just wouldn't answer the question. So it felt like a wall in terms of us being able to connect.
Yeah.
So his answer to that question. And then what else? There's a few other things. And then I asked him another question. He told me that he had come out of a 3-year relationship. And I said, well, how was that for you to come out of 3-year relationship where there was love there? And he said it was easy because they just weren't right for each other. And I feel like as much as I've seen breakups to make us personally, professionally, all of that, I've never heard anybody to describe the end of a relationship where there was love as easy.
Right.
And that, along with a few other signs, it just felt like he wouldn't allow himself to deeply feel.
Yeah.
And all of those things put together, I was like, you know what? It's just this. I don't think this is going to work.
Right.
So it's paying attention to whether or not they're willing to open up and to disclose, emotions, pretty much.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think those are definitely good reasons to walk away. Because I'm like, what? It's easy, child.
Yeah.
So if we get together and we break up, that's what you're gonna say about? Like, I think that's where my mom would have been like, what?
Yeah, and then that was like some things he told me that kind of like made me. But then the thing that actually he did to me was there can be like a hot and coldness.
Yeah.
So 1 minute you're available and wanting to communicate, and then you go ghost for like a week and a half or so, or I'm driving home. You said you were going to check on me when I got home. He didn't check on me or respond to my messages. So like things where I don't quite know where you stand.
Yes.
To me, that says there's some unavailability there.
Absolutely.
Or, lack of ability to communicate, all those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just know, I think if I could make it simple, and this is what I tell my clients, tap into your emotions and how you feel.
Yeah.
Are you when you interact with that person? If you're feeling confused, if you're feeling disappointed, sad, constantly, maybe not once or twice, but if that's the theme, there's something there that you need to pay attention to.
Yes.
And a lot of times for me, it's like that emotional unavailability that leads to those emotions.
That's fire. I feel like that's it right there. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. And it's just really paying attention to those small details because sometimes it's subtle, right? And I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
Yeah. And any thoughts or questions about anything, like for me, or just, just in general, or anything else you wanted to share before we like get close to like wrapping up?
No, I think we touched on it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm definitely like interested and want to like keep following like your journey through the blog. And of course, like, I hope we can keep in contact.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, let the audience know where they can find you or follow you.
Sure. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok, Kaity, Kaity B Rodriguez. And you can go to KaityBRodriguez.com for the blog, or 100, just the number 100 spelled out, 100datesinhouston.com.
Love that. Love that. And are you accepting any new clients?
I am.
Okay.
I am. So if you are a client, or if you're a resident of New Jersey or Texas, your therapist has to be licensed in the state you live in. But I also do coaching, so assertive communication coaching and success coaching, and you can live anywhere in the world for that. So absolutely.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? Before we end officially, because I feel like we didn't get into that, right? With the assertive communication coaching, can you elaborate a little bit more on that, like for the audience?
Sure. So I like to say that we can communicate in 3 to 4 different ways as human beings. We can communicate passively, aggressively, assertively, or passive aggressively. So passively is when we have something to say, we need to say it, but we don't say it. We suppress it because we don't want to hurt feelings or whatever. So I give the example of, let's say you carpool with your friend to work. She's always late. It's starting to make you late, and you just don't say anything because you don't want it to lead to a conflict. You're being passive.
Right.
Then we have aggressive, where we do say what is on our mind and how we feel, but we don't do it in a way that is respectful or considerate of the other person's emotions. So that same example, friend is late, you approach her, what's wrong with you? You need to get it together, and, just all the things, all the judgment. That's aggressive. Then we have passive aggressive, which is kind of like we're saying it, but we're not really saying it directly. We're being like sarcastic maybe. So there's some aggression in there, but it's not direct aggression.
Right.
And then, so that might be like a look who finally decided to show up, right? But assertive is when we say what's on our mind and what we need to say, but we do it in a way that is respectful and considerate of the other person.
Yeah.
And honors ourselves, but also honors them as a human being.
Yeah.
And so that might look like, listen, I'm concerned and I'm a bit stressed out because I've been getting late, getting to work late. We need to figure out a solution, something to that effect. And I think when you're dating, honesty is important.
Yeah.
Right? And people think when they're being passive by not saying something, they're helping the other person, but you're really not, because they're in the dark about what's really happening.
Yeah.
And communication is one of the part of the foundation of a healthy relationship. So you need to be able to say what is actually, what's actually going on, but you also need to be able to say it in a way that's respectful.
Yeah.
Some people will be aggressive all in the name of, I'm just speaking my truth or being direct, and not if you want to preserve that relationship.
That part.
Yeah. So I've learned some good tools with that, and I help my clients with it.
Love it. Love it. Love that so much. And I feel like I talk about that a lot too, just in individual sessions, right? Like assertive communication, because most people don't communicate assertively from what I realize, and they don't. It's either one or the other, right?
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum. And so I think that's needed for sure. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you for having me.
Of
It's been
course.
fun.
Yes, I enjoyed this. Make sure you guys follow Kaity. All your information will be there. And the link to the blog and everything. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in each time. The support has been everything. And yeah, Your Mental Matters podcast, guys. We are out.
Bye.